This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So now we begin the second segment of our trip by traveling to Nice, which is the gateway and the capital of the Provence region. And it's very important to realize that Provence had very few Jews. The communities were very, very small. There were a number of communities in the Provence, Narbonne, Lunel. We'll learn about many of them. They were very small communities, and yet they were graced by literally hundreds of Chachamim. Yesterday we discussed the subject of the Machlokes, the Chachmei Provincia, and Rabbeinu Yehuda. There were many, many Chachmei Provincia. Let's see if anybody knows who was the first of the Chachmei Provincia. The first and the founder of all the sages in Provence was Rav Moshe Hadarshan of the 11th century. He was the Rebbe of the Aruch. The Aruch was Rav Nassim ben Yechiel. The Aruch, of course, lived in Rome, and Rav Moshe Hadarshan was the Rebbe of the Aruch. That's very interesting. You think Rav Moshe Hadarshan, I know, I'm familiar with him. Rashi quotes him all the time. The most well-known comment of Rav Moshe Hadarshan, Rashi brings in toward the beginning of Chukas, where Rav Moshe Hadarshan gives a reason for the Para Aduma. So you think, by the way, Rav Moshe Hadarshan formulated midrashic comments similar to the Yalkut Shimoni, and Rashi refers to it in Bamidbar Parak Tezvav as the Yesoid of Rav Moshe Hadarshan. So you think he was a big doiresh, he was into Agadata. Says Rabbeinu Tam. Now Rabbeinu Tam was not complimentary of those who pretenders. Rabbeinu Tam said Rav Moshe Hadarshan and his son were the leading poskim in the entire south of France. And it's interesting, those, the Provincial Jews, they deemed Provence similar to the climate of Eretz Yisrael. So they said this was, they viewed the Midbar like Midbar Sinai and the mountains like the Golan. They considered the climate here similar to Eretz Yisrael. And we could apply the phrase, Haroitza lahachkim yadrim, that the Chachma in France really was in the south. Says Rabbeinu Tam that Rav Moshe Hadarshan and Rav Levi, his brother, were the foremost halachic authorities in the entire Provence. So, Rav Moshe Hadarshan was the great-grandson of Rav Abun, the first Rosh Yeshiva in the Narbonne. His son was Rav Moshe. His son was Rabbeinu Yaakov. His son was Rav Moshe Hadarshan. So the next time you see Rashi, and Rashi says, Kol zeh lamadati miyisoido shel Rav Moshe Hadarshan, try to get it. You'll engender a warm feeling to Rav Moshe Hadarshan. He was the founder of Jewish life here in Provence, and probably when he came to eat somewhere, this must have been no. So we'll learn about many of the other Chacham. Now, what's very interesting about the Chachmei Provence is that even though they were students one of the other, they did not all view things the same way. So, for instance, the Ravid, and we're talking about the Ravid the third, questioned the Rambam greatly. The Baal HaSagos, Amar Avram Zehevel. And his leading Talmud was Rabbi Yonasan of Lunel, was the head of the Chacham of Lunel, was the greatest advocate of the Rambam. He wrote to the Rambam 24 questions. The Rambam answered all of his questions. And Rabbi Yonasan of Lunel, the student of the Ravid, was the greatest defender of the Rambam. So the Chachmei Provence were all independent thinkers. They did not have one uniform party line. They all thought for themselves, and this is one of the hallmark characteristics of the Chachmei Provincia.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.